Hey, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How are we all doing? It's me, Legal Vices, sitting here having a great time, wondering how everything's going with you guys. It's one of those days, I'm afraid. We got a lot of things going on here. Hang on, let me turn off the volume on my notepad, on my tablet. All right. We got a couple of backstage things here to talk about first, and so far, so good. So there we go. Um, all right. Yeah. I'm late, so that's probably nothing new, but I kind of have some good reasons today. Um, First of all, as some of you may have seen, Jack Matt says, "Stop whacking the willy." Oh, oh, camera was on the whole time. Huh. Yeah. I Joe got a big giant freaking monitor, good logic, and then just before that, Andrew Branca got a big giant monitor. So I sort of felt the pressure, and I replaced my little 33-inch super widescreen with a 50-inch monitor. So that's what I was in the process of setting up this gigantic 50-inch monitor that's right in front of me, which is why the camera is higher up because it's about that much higher than it used to be. So yeah, the camera is way high. That's where it's got to be because I have a 50-inch monitor in front of me. I'll zoom it in a little bit so it's tighter. But this is kind of it. I can't even reach the camera now. So even if I wanted to adjust it, I couldn't. Um, but while I was putting this monitor together and putting it on the table and moving everything and getting it set up with the computer, um, idiot Yoda got in the way, and I sort of tripped over Yoda and just put a gash about that long from my kneecap partway down my shin, uh, from the edge of the computer case. And yeah, it's kind of deep. It's not really a cut, it's more like a gouge. And I've been trying to staunch the bleeding there for a bit, and then it was just a matter of throwing everything up. So nothing is where it should be, nothing is where it's going to be. It's just I had to get here today, so we're going live. Whether I don't know that I was checking on my tablet because the I need to tone down the colors on the monitor here quite a bit. So I was just checking to see if it looked okay on the tablet. So the colors still look the same, so that's a good thing. Yeah, so that's all right. Yeah, it's just the saturation is up way high on this, and I had no idea how to adjust it. But it's great that I have this gigantic monitor, so now I can see without squinting. Because y'all accuse me of being asleep because I have to like squint my eyes, and I've got damn bifocals on, so the computer was just far enough away. The monitor was just far enough away that it wasn't in focus for the far distance viewing or the close distance viewing on the on the bifocals. So now I can just keep my eyes open, and I have to break myself of the habit of squinting. But so hopefully I'll be able to keep my eyes open a little bit more and watch and watch the monitor. But yeah, this is a big ass monitor, and I can see things clearly. So there we go. Was Yoda hurt? No, Yoda's just an idiot. You could you could you could drive over Yoda with a truck and you'd be like, "What? What do you wake me up for?" Nope. Do you need stitches? It's quite possible, Rose. It's kind of borderline, but I kind of pulled it tight, and I've got it wrapped up. It seems to sort of maybe kind of be. I mean, it gouged out a bunch of skin, so it wasn't like a clean cut that you can just stick back together. But it's kind of wrapped in as tight as it can be. So I'll check it out in the morning and see how it looks. It doesn't hurt, so yeah. I mean, I'm sure it'll hurt when I bend my knee next, but great. Um, there we go. It's definitely Tuesday, just so you know. Uh, what do y'all? Did I say it was Tuesday? What are y'all talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, so no alcohol was involved, which was damn lucky because the next thing I was going to be doing was carrying in some bottles to put them back on the shelf, but they're still remaining on the. And I better not get a $100 super chat or anything because I literally have no alcohol in arm's reach. I know it's a shame, it's a travesty, but that's the way it is. All right. So we've got a few things. I don't know how long we'll be going today because Nick Ricade is going to be streaming the Texas trial, the Aaron what's his face trial, and he's invited me to be on that. So I don't know when he's going to start. So we'll just we'll go until we don't have to go until I can't go anymore. But we've got we've got one super chat from the Apostle Steve. Let's scroll up here. Band-Aid money. Thank you so much for the Band-Aid money. Band-Aid money is always appreciated. Thanks. All right. We've wasted enough time. We've wasted like 5 minutes here already. All right. So if I'm a little bit off today, it's for several reasons. One, my blood alcohol content is dangerously low. Two, this is the third day of me wearing pants on stream, thanks to Vic Magana. There's and I have this new monitor that I'm totally unfamiliar with. But other than that, things are cool. So, hey, mods, welcome to see you. Alan, good to see you. Rose, great to see you. Flux, you are here. What other mods do we have modding around here? Yeah, Nick said, Mr. K said, Nick said he was going to be start streaming at 8 his time. I mean, that's 11 my time. That'll only give us like another 45 minutes. So I will probably be joining him about 30 minutes late. So we'll probably go another hour and 15 minutes. Is this the Dumpster Brothers trial? No, this is a cop who shot a woman through her window. The neighbor said, "Oh, you know, they burned some chicken in the house, and they opened the doors to kind of let the smoke go out. It was in the middle of the night. The neighbors looked out and saw the doors open, reported that the doors were open, and was concerned about someone in the house. So the cops went over. They didn't announce themselves. They snuck around the grass a little bit. They snuck around the house. The woman at home, she heard some noises. She heard some noises there coming from outside her house. She thought, oh my God, there's burglars out there. So she got her firearm to protect herself and her nephew, Zion, that was in the house, as any responsible adult would do. But on the outside, the police are looking in saying, oh my God, there's a woman with a gun in there. The house must be being robbed. And the cop says, I can't remember what he said, but it was like, you drop the gun, boom, and shot that fast. And so now he's being charged with murder. And the defense rested last week. The prosecution will be starting the prosecution rested, and the defense will be starting their case in chief today. So all right, welcome everybody in chat. We're going to be doing some of the chat things today, so we'll try to get it to as much as we can. Super chats always accepted, never required. But the super chats get the priority reads, guaranteed to read all of them, never censored, unless it's something that's going to get me totally deplatformed. In which case, we'll find a workaround. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do. We've got 32,520, working our way up to 33,000, onward towards that goal of 50,000 subscribers. And when we get 50,000 subscribers, I'll be an idiot and do a 24-hour stream. Why not? I got nothing better to do with my life. So that's hopefully by July, we'll be up to 50,000 subscribers, hopefully long before that. But the goal is July. Paul Farrell, thank you so much. Just dropped a deer off to be processed. Oh my God, you must live in America. It is that time of year. In Utah, the deer season goes mid-October to the first part of November. Hey, see with the camera up here, you can see the dogs better. That'll be good. Flux pants are prison, yes, but well, I'm in black shorts. I'm in black basketball shorts here. Pants are never going to happen at home, but we need to prevent the Vic accidents from happening. So, and it could very well happen because this camera is. I have no idea what's going to happen with this camera. It could fall at any moment. We just don't know. Oh yeah, this is kind of a cool thing too. Bella Maddie's mama. Before we get into the Maritime Monday videos, hey guys, there's a video out there of Johnny Depp showing love to a little boy who needs a heart transplant. A kid is trying to get YouTube plaque to help him out at Crack in the Box. It's all one word, Crack in the Box, I believe. But yeah, this kid, he's trying to get 100,000 viewers before he dies, basically 100,000 subscribers before he dies. Poor little kid. I believe he's already had 2 heart transplants, and he's just kind of on his way out. I think. I hope he is get something. He hope he gets some surgery. But the idea is he just wants to get he just wants to get the 100,000 subscribers. So if you want to be cool, help out a little kid who's in some dire need, at Crack in the Box. He's got 4 videos up, I think. Go and give him a subscribe. Get those numbers up. Make him a happy camper. Wait, we got the doorway to the back room looks like a mirror. Oh, it kind of does, doesn't it? All righty. Well, shoot. What are we going to be doing today? Today on Maritime Monday, we're going to be looking at the disaster, the tragedy of the SS Princess Sofia. I know we're going to say it's Princess Sophia because it's spelled like Princess Sophia, but ask anybody here in the chat that's from the UK, and they will tell you that Princess Sophia pronounced her name Princess Sophia. So the correct pronunciation for the ship is the Princess Sophia. It was named after Princess Sophia. Am I wrong? Am I wrong, British people? I am not wrong. So this is a weird, bizarre story. And there's 2 videos I want to get through. A news story about it and two videos. The videos have a lot of overlap, but there are some differences. They do present some different bits of information that I think are pretty cool. Yeah, Execution Game says, nah, he's right. As a Brit, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Hi, dog. There's Yoda. See, don't you guys like this camera angle better? You get to see the dog better. No, this was Princess Sophia Matilda. It was named after. She was the 12th child and 5th daughter of King George III and Queen Charlotte. So that's who it's named after. Get in the robot, stingy. Yeah, well, that you showed me a funny maritime deal. That'll be in our next compilation. Don't worry about it. We'll get to that. We'll show you that. That's pretty good. All right. Yeah, see, you get to see some scrunched up, hairy, snorting creatures, and also his dogs. Now I've just got to try to stop them from licking the blood that's seeping through the bandage on my leg. How cool is that? They're going to get the taste of human blood and attack me in my sleep. All right, enough of this. We've wasted 12 minutes now. Chat, make sure you hit that like button. We are come on, 206 concurrent viewers and only 81 likes. Shame on y'all. I've told you stories of gouging my knee, a new camera angle. You've seen dogs. We've got a kid that needs help. Come on, hit that like button. Get us up to 200 likes. You know we should be up to 200 likes. There's no excuse we're not up to 200 likes. So there we go. Get us up to 200 likes and we will be in an awesome position. But here, let's start with a little bit of a history of the case. I mean, it's a really, as I said, it's a really bizarre case because there's some facts that seem really strange at first glance, and there's a reason. Oh, that's a really great banner you got there, Capital Daily. See if we can expand this out a little bit. There we go. Maybe embiggen it. How far can we embiggen it? Well, not that big, I guess. All right. Sorry about this. Like I said, I've just got to get used to this stupid new monitor. All right, there we go. This is the worst maritime disaster in British Columbia history, and it's also one of the most cruel, it says. U.S. soldier R.S. McQueen's trip out of his Alaska posting had already been marred by a cascading series of inconvenient delays. And now he kvetched in a letter to his mother, his ride to Seattle had gotten itself stuck on a reef. This is the story. The ship gets stuck on a reef. That's it. No big deal. Gets stuck on a reef. As soon as the storm quits, we'll be taken off, he assured her in an October 25th letter. That also subtly mocked the more dramatic reactions of his fellow passengers. After passengers heard the sickening scrunch of their ship grinding, I mean, that would be it would be sort of distressing, wouldn't it, to be on a ship and just sort of hear it kind of grinding its way onto some rocks. McQueen saw one woman who had got herself into a black evening dress and didn't worry over who saw her putting it on. Movie houses were only a few years old, but already the 35-year-old soldier had adopted a now familiar habit of comparing anything strange or unusual to a movie. This wreck has all the markings of a movie stage setting. All we lack is the hero and the vampire, he wrote. Well, doesn't that just spark your interest? McQueen never sent the letter. Within hours of writing, he was among 353 souls aboard the SS Princess Sofia, claimed by the ice-cold waters of the North Pacific. This is apparently a very simple ship grounding. It runs onto a reef, it gets stuck. So how did all 353 people on board this ship die? There were no survivors on the Princess Sofia, and to this day, nobody's entirely sure what happened in the ship's terrifying final moments. Bill Leslie said it runs aground. Shame on you, Bill. All right. So this is the background. Now we're going to pop out and watch the video, and then we can go back to that article in due time. But for now, let's start the first of the videos. We got we got all this chats out of the way. We got everything. How are we looking over here? Hey, we're up to 144 likes, but we got 246 people. 100 of you haven't done your job. While I'm bringing the video, the 100 of you that haven't hit that like button, shame on you. Go down there, hit that like button. I know you don't think about it, but that's pretty much all I think about, because that's what YouTube looks at when they recommend our videos. They look at the likes, the like to viewer ratio, all these kind of things to decide whether they're going to put it on their website, or they're going to recommend it on people's home pages, on the closing videos, or whatnot. This is how they do it, through the likes. So please do me that awesome favor of smashing that like button. Thank you very, very much. Now, I'll just say this looks really nice on this screen. All right. Let's look at what happened here. But first, before we talk about the Princess Sofia, we're going to go back even further in history and talk about another accident.
One of the hardest decisions a captain might ever have to make is whether or not to order an evacuation of their ship. In 1904, after the SS Clallam began taking on water in a heavy storm in the Strait of Juan de Fuca, Captain George Roberts panicked and hastily ordered an evacuation. 3 of his ship's lifeboats were hastily loaded and lowered into the violent sea. Within minutes, all 3 boats capsized, spilling everyone into the water. The ordeal killed nearly everyone in the boats, including every woman and child on board.
So that is a problem. When your ship is in an extreme situation and you have to deploy the lifeboats, you're putting yourself at risk, because if there's a disaster that's big enough to sink your ship, your little lifeboats are in grave peril as well. And here, the sinking was due to the weather and things like that. So you've got these ships that are full, usually overcrowded. Lifeboats back then kind of got overcrowded. You've got waves and wind, and then that led to a situation where people disembarked from a ship into lifeboats in extremely bad weather, and they ended up dead minutes later.
The Clallam proved more seaworthy than originally thought, remaining afloat for hours, long enough for most of those still on board to be rescued, including Captain Roberts.
Yeah, so not only did the people that got in the lifeboat die, the people that stayed on board the ship, they got rescued because the ship floated a little bit longer than they thought it would.
The tragedy became a cautionary tale of what could happen if a captain reacted to an emergency in haste and sends his passengers away too quickly. This lesson would prove deadly for the SS Princess Sofia a little over a decade later.
Yeah, so there you go. This was a cautionary tale to other ships' captains. To not abandon ship so quickly.
In 1891, the Canadian Pacific Railway began building a fleet of Pacific steamships connecting Vancouver, British Columbia with Asia and Australia. To further cement their market dominance, the company established a steamship line on the west coast of Canada and Alaska, running along what's known as the Inside Passage. Navigation in the area was challenging, and Canadian Pacific almost immediately lost one of their first liners on the route, called the Islander, when the 1,500-ton vessel struck an iceberg off Douglas Island in Alaska and sank within 20 minutes, killing over 40 people. To better match the rough conditions and gain an edge in the competitive market, the line began modernizing its West Coast fleet in 1907 and ordered 9 new vessels over the years leading up to the outbreak of World War I. These included the new coastal liner SS Princess Sofia. While these vessels were designed to withstand harsh weather conditions if needed, coastal liners were designed to sail within 50 miles of land. She was constructed by Bow McLaughlin and Company in Paisley, Scotland. The 2,320-ton vessel was designed to hold up to the harsh Pacific Northwest weather, and she was equipped with many modern safety features, including a double hull and a wireless communication set. She carried 8 steel lifeboats, 1 wooden workboat, and 6 life rafts. She was also equipped with 548 life preservers, 20 of which were child-sized. Her accommodations were comfortable and included a forward observation lounge, a social hall, and a 112-seat dining saloon with.
So did you notice that there's about 200 more lifeboats than there were people, 200 more life jackets than there were people on the boat when it sank. And I'm saying this was saying this is your favorite channel. Just so we know, this is Big Old Boats channel. It's a nice channel. I enjoyed browsing through. There's not a huge amount of content, but all of this there is really cool. Oh, and by the way, an update, Brick and Mortar and I are in contact. I know I was trying to do that, and we had a few initial discussions back and forth, but Brick and Mortar, who does some of the channels that we watch, who does some of the videos that we watch, is sometime in January. He will be here. I will interview him. We'll talk to him, and he's going to watch one of his videos together with us. So that'll be fun. That'll be sometime in January. He's going to get back with me in a couple of weeks once his schedule settles down, and we'll work out a confirmed date. So join us for Brick and Mortar at some point in January.
Large windows. She had a single triple expansion steam engine that could achieve a respectable 14-knot service speed. She was designed to service the more northern British Columbia and Alaska routes in the summer and the Victoria-Vancouver routes during the winter freeze. The Princess Sofia was launched on November 8, 1911, and after she was completed in 1912, she sailed the long voyage around Cape Horn to her new home in British Columbia. On June 7, 1912, she sailed her maiden voyage and soon took up her regular route between Victoria and Skagway, Alaska, along with her running mate, the Princess May. At the outset of World War I, the Princess Sofia was requisitioned to serve the war effort. She carried some of the first troops from Western Canada to the war in Europe. Though she wouldn't survive the war, she would soon return to passenger service. I think I'm fascinated by stories like the Princess Sofia because I grew up nearby in the Pacific Northwest. While I sadly don't live in the area anymore, certain scents like cedar and oak immediately reconnect me with that nostalgic feeling of home. That's why I'm so excited to be partnering with Scentbird on this video. There's nothing quite like finding that perfect scent to match your personality and leave a good impression on the people around you. I get really overwhelmed by the fragrance section at the store. After spraying a couple of different scents, they all start smelling the same to me, and I can never really tell which one works. That's why I love Scentbird. They've made the process of finding your perfect fragrance easy and enjoyable. To a full and discover not that with no love. This one, the forest, little bit first.
All right. Thank you
By
to whoever just
1918,
subscribed.
Princess Sofia was commanded by Captain Leonard P. Locke, a 66-year-old veteran of the sea who began his career at the age of 16. Captain Locke was considered one of the most experienced navigators on the West Coast.
And just so you know, none of these videos, none of these images are actually of the Princess Sofia. These are just the production that he's put together using other ships and other videos
At the time. Though he was known as a strict captain who ran a tight ship, He also had a softer side and enjoyed reading and writing poetry. He was
Aw.
particularly fond of the poet Robert W. Service. As the season came to a close, the captains of the Canadian Pacific Navigation Company were under immense pressure. On October 13th, one of the larger vessels in the Princess fleet, the Princess Adelaide, ran aground between Victoria and Vancouver. No one was injured in the accident, but the vessel was pulled from service for extensive repairs, leaving the remaining fleet with no alternate passenger vessels to fill in if there were any additional disruptions in service. Captain Locke was explicitly warned to keep his vessel out of trouble that winter, and he likely felt pressure to keep his liner on schedule. On Saturday, October 19, 1918, the Princess Sophia left Vancouver on her last northern run of the year. When she docked at Prince Rupert, steward Joseph Woosnam became ill with influenza and had to leave the ship. He was admitted to the hospital and recovered just a few days later. The Spanish flu ironically saved the young steward's life. The Princess Sophia arrived in Juneau late on October 22nd and reached her northernmost destination in Skagway the following afternoon. Winter was already setting in, and the Sophia was one of the final opportunities to leave the northern city before the freeze set in. People crowded the docks, eager to head south. She was scheduled to leave at 7 p.m., but the loading of passengers and freight took longer than expected, and she wasn't able to leave until just after 10 p.m. on October 23rd. She carried 75 crew and 278 passengers. They represented a cross-section of humanity. Oscar Poppert and his twin brother Walter were hoping to strike gold in the Alaskan interior. The two saved up enough money to head south for the winter. Walter booked passage on the Prince Rupert, but Oscar managed to get a first-class ticket on the Princess Sophia. The two parted at Skagway, planning to reunite at the Diller Hotel in Seattle. Florence Beaton's husband struck gold in the Iditarod district of Alaska. She was the first European woman to arrive there in 1909. Now she was traveling south with her two children, while her husband stayed behind to tend to his claim. Lulu Mae Johnson was a dance hall performer and hotelier in Dawson City.
These were the good old days when women wore pants and jackets and dressed like this before you were all confined to those dresses and things. You know, this is when women were wild and wore pantsuits.
Yukon. She married her employer, Murray S. Eads, in 1904, and in 1918, the couple sold their business and were heading south to start their next venture. The gold rush was long over by this time, and the economy it fueled was winding down. Many of the Sophia's passengers were leaving the area in search of opportunities elsewhere, with no plans to return in the spring. In 1900, Skagway's population was just over 3,000 people, but by 1918, the town's population shrank to just around 500. Just about everyone in the area knew someone on board the Sophia. As she sailed away, many well-wishers crowded the wharf to see her off, one of their last links to the outside world before the harsh Alaska winter descended. As the Sophia steamed south on the main channel, conditions rapidly deteriorated.
As they always do.
With the poor visibility, Captain Locke depended on a method of navigation called dead reckoning. This imperfect method typically used a device towed behind the ship that would measure the distance traveled from a fixed point to calculate the ship's position.
Now, there's a saying about dead reckoning, which is literally, I mean, you may, as anybody here that has actually sailed using dead reckoning can tell you. Dead reckoning is only slightly better than just closing your eyes and spinning the wheel at random. There's an old saying that says, dead reckoning is a sure way of telling you exactly where you aren't. So it's wholly unreliable, and it's really, really not a good idea.
While this practice was common at the time, it required precise calculations, and it was difficult to account for weather conditions and currents. While what exactly took place in her wheelhouse is unknown, it seems that despite the reduced visibility, Captain Locke kept her sailing at or near her full speed, eager to arrive in Vancouver on time. At some point, either he or his first officer, Jerry Shaw, made a navigation error as they traversed the Lynn Channel. In the blinding snowstorm and the heavy seas, the Princess Sophia was now sailing up to 1.25 miles off course, putting her in a direct collision course with the submerged rocks of Vanderbilt.
And see, that's the problem, is just that whole area is so full of these tiny little islets these tiny little reefs buried under the water. And if you're a mile and a half off course, you may as well just, as I said, you may as well just be closing your eyes because the maps are off the chart. I mean, you think you have a clear course in front of you, but if you look a mile and a half to the side where you are, it's probably full of rocks and other really sharp, nasty things. So, I mean, a mile and a half doesn't seem like a lot, but in navigational terms, that's pretty freaking huge, especially when you're along the coast and you're in this particularly rocky, dangerous area.
Vanderbilt Reef. At low tide, the flat, rocky surface of Vanderbilt Reef rises only about 12 feet or 3.7 meters above the water. But at high tide and in heavy seas, the rocks sit dangerously just below the surface, almost completely invisible. At the time, these hazards were marked only by a single unlit buoy anchored at the south end of the rocks. While the channel was about 6.5 miles wide, the rocks narrowed the main navigation channel to just 2.5 miles on the east side.
Yeah.
Unaware that they were sailing dangerously off course, the Sophia plowed forward through the night. With almost no visibility, it came as a complete surprise when at 2:10 a.m., the ship slammed violently into the hidden rocks of the reef. She struck with such force that many of her passengers were thrown from their berths. In the moments immediately after the collision, panic descended over the ship. Everyone dressed as quickly as they could, donned their life preservers, and rushed on deck. Captain Locke ordered the lifeboats readied and swung out over the side in preparation. But the order to abandon the stricken liner never came. As the experienced captain surveyed the situation, it was abundantly clear to him that in the violent storm, no one would survive in the tiny lifeboats. Almost immediately, 20-year-old wireless operator David M. Robinson began sending out distress signals. His messages soon reached Juneau and were passed on to CPR agent Frank Lowell, who immediately began contacting captains in the area. Within an hour, the first rescue craft, a 65-foot gasoline launch, the Estebeth, captained by James P. Davis, left Juneau for the scene of the stranded liner. She would be the first of many.
All right. Glitterfart said I watched something about the Sewol ferry last night, the Korean ferry that sank. I guess what it's like 9 years ago. Yeah, Jesus Christ. Yeah. So now, Glitter, do you see why me as a foreigner living in Korea is not going to touch that story ever? I just literally have no right to, and I have nothing to gain by discussing the Sewol ferry. Thunder Rain says, what exactly is Dead Reckoning? Dead Reckoning is essentially you drop something in the water. You think you know where you kind of get your position from the stars. You know, you do some celestial navigation. You fix your position where you think you are, latitude and longitude. You drop something in the water. You calculate your speed and your distance. So it's essentially speed times distance from where you think you are. So you drop something in the water, you sail a fixed amount of time at a certain estimated amount of speed, and that calculates your distance. So you plot your next place where you think you are on the map, but that doesn't take into account tides, winds, any other external factors. So it's you don't even use fixed objects like mountains or coastlines or things. You just literally forget about the wind, forget about the tides, forget about the waves, forget about currents, forget about everything. Just say, okay, we think we're here and we think we're traveling this fast for this amount of time. And so that puts our distance, and you can get screwed up really, really easily. Like, it's literally guessing. It's educated guessing because you're at least doing some sort of what might be correct math. So yeah, I mean it's it's not the best way to navigate your ship. Don't know why they were just using dead reckoning. Could have been the weather. I don't know, but you basically estimate yourself, and you can be deadly wrong, as we're about to see here. I hope that cleared it up.
Captain Locke assessed his ship. The severity of the situation was clear. While the Princess Sophia was not taking on any water, she was lodged firmly on the rocks with little hope of backing off at high tide. The initial panic had long subsided, and by mid-morning, when the tide receded, the ship's bottom was lodged around 9 feet above the surface of the water. The Estebeth?
This is actually another princess vessel. I think there's the Princess May, I believe it was, but kind of the same thing happened to another ship in this line. But so basically, they ran aground on a reef because they calculated everything wrong and they weren't where they thought they were. And I mean, naturally, you think, okay, we'll go on this reef. The tide will change, and then we'll float and we can sail away. Well, turns out they were kind of close to high tide. So the tide went out, and now they're 9 feet, 3 meters above the water, just sitting on this reef. That's where the problems start.
Arrived on the scene at around 11 a.m. By this time, the storm was settling. The snow had stopped, and while the seas were still heavy, they were not so heavy that lifeboats couldn't survive. Captain Davis was even able to row his ship's workboat to within 50 feet of the Princess Sophia. He hailed Captain Locke and asked him if he was going to order an evacuation. Captain Davis would later testify that he felt that while the vessel's position would have made it difficult to lower lifeboats and load them from the reef, it would have been possible with some muscle power from the crew and more able-bodied passengers. Another small vessel of similar size to the Estebeth, the Amy, soon arrived on the scene. Her captain, Edward McDougall, also asked Captain Locke whether he was ready to begin evacuating his passengers. Despite aid from the two vessels, who were able to get relatively close to the stricken liner in calmer weather conditions, Captain Locke refused to allow his passengers to evacuate. He determined that the Sophia was lodged firmly in a crevice on the rocks and that they were in no immediate danger. As the day dragged on,
Well, do you see the problem there? I mean, you say, okay, it's wedged in a little crevice here. It's not in any great danger right now. It's not going to roll over. It's just wedged there tight. We don't need to evacuate people right now. So he refused to allow them to evacuate. Part of it is we might be related to the first ship accident that he mentioned at the beginning, where letting people off the vessel, evacuating people off the vessel too early, or can be detrimental. Perhaps that was on his mind as well. But for whatever reason, he said, sorry, we're not going to let you off this ship to go to one of the other ships that are here for the rescue because we're not in any real danger. Hang tight. We'll be okay when the tide comes in again.
Other small vessels arrived on the scene to offer assistance, but by late afternoon, the weather once again soon deteriorated, and Captain Locke encouraged the smaller vessels to seek safe anchorage for the night. Complicating the situation, cable communications to Alaska were lost only a few days before.
All right, so there we go again. There's two more problems. Three more problems, I guess. The weather is starting to get bad again at night. And because the weather is so bad, the captain doesn't want these smaller boats hanging around and possibly getting dashed on the rocks themselves. So he sends the rescue ships away. Go take shelter. We'll be fine sitting here on this reef all by our little selves in the middle of the storm. Don't worry about us. We're good. And also, they've lost the ability essentially to send messages back to Alaska because for whatever reason, the line was down. They couldn't telegraph the land at that point. So they're isolated. They've sent the rescue ships away and the storm is coming in.
They had been restored. A rush of messages were making it difficult to organize rescue efforts. Because of this, the 1,341-ton lighthouse tender Cedar did not receive word of the situation until 3 p.m. on the 24th. Commanded by Captain John W. Ledbetter, the Cedar was performing patrol duties for the United States Navy. Being only 66 nautical miles from the scene, she was the largest all-weather vessel in the area. Captain Ledbetter sent a wireless message to Captain Locke to offer assistance. Locke immediately accepted. As the Cedar headed for the stricken liner, Ledbetter asked Locke if it would be possible to evacuate his passengers in the night. Locke responded, "Impossible to get passengers off tonight. Sea running too strong. May get off tomorrow. Strong tide." By the evening, as larger fishing vessels arrived on the scene, the weather grew significantly worse, with strong winds and heavy seas. One of these vessels, the King of Winds, was able to get within 900 feet of the Sophia, but they lacked a wireless set and were unable to make contact with Captain Locke. They could see people moving around the decks of the grounded ship, but with the storm raging, there was little they could do to help. The Cedar arrived on the scene just after 8 p.m., but by this point the storm left them incapable of mounting any rescue effort. Had contact been made with the Cedar earlier in the day, she might have been able to reach the Sophia during those precious few hours of calm when a rescue might have been possible. Now they had little option but to hope.
So there you go. You're stuck in that situation. Where you can't do anything. The ship doesn't get your message. They didn't get there until it was too late.
Hope for better conditions in the morning. Snow soon began to fall once again, creating near blizzard conditions. The small flotilla of rescue vessels were forced to seek shelter for the night, leaving the Princess Sophia to fend for herself through the storm. The night of the 24th was a cold and uncomfortable ordeal for the Princess Sophia's unlucky passengers and crew. At 8:30 p.m., one of the boiler's main pipes ruptured, causing the ship's heat and lighting to fail. Some rescue ships on the scene even...
And we've talked about this before, where when pipes rupture, when boiler pipes rupture, bad things happen. One, you lose power. Two, the whole freaking ship can explode. So they're lucky that didn't happen.
Unlucky passengers and crew. At 8:30 p.m., one of the boiler's main pipes ruptured, causing the ship's heat and lighting to fail. Some rescue ships on the scene even thought she had been lost when her lights disappeared. It's hard to imagine just what that night would have been like. Without heating, her passenger spaces would be bitterly cold as the snow and wind battered the stricken liner. Those on board probably huddled in their bunks, listening to the howling wind and their steel-hulled trap groaning on the rocks.
Yeah, people I like cold too. That's why I said. I mean, it's cold here in Korea now. It's not it's not freezing in the house, but it's still cold. Some people would be wondering why I'm not having my heat on, but I wear short pants all year. Even in the middle of winter, I just kind of sleep with a sheet over me. But when you're in a dark, non-heated, giant cold steel vessel sitting on the cold ocean on some rocks in the middle of a Pacific Northwest winter blizzard, I bet that's kind of a special kind of humid, wet, nasty cold. Ugh.
By this point, they would have been trapped for a full day, and the horrifying ordeal was far from over. Power on the ship was finally restored at 11 a.m. on October 25th, offering the passengers a brief reprieve from the bitter cold and affording wireless operator David Robinson another opportunity to contact the outside world. But the morning offered little reprieve from the harsh conditions. Captain Locke felt that his liner had held up well through the night, and he felt no reason to believe his passengers were in any immediate danger. While the storm raged on, Captain Ledbetter desperately searched for a way to mount a rescue. In the night, he tried to assess the situation with searchlights and determined that it would be impossible to evacuate by lifeboat. His next idea was to get the Cedar as close to the Princess Sophia as possible and establish a breacher's buoy. This was a desperate solution, with little hope of successfully rescuing the over 300 people trapped on board. After 2 failed attempts to drop anchor, Captain Locke radioed Ledbetter, telling him that it was no use and they would...
So have you followed the timeline here? That's the question. The ship went aground. The ship went aground at, like, was it 2 a.m.? It was just after 2 a.m. on the morning of October 25th. Oh, 24th, sorry. October 24th. So 2 a.m. on October 24th. They're already in the evening of the 25th. So they've been there more than 24 hours. They've been there more than 36 hours. And the captain is still saying, there's no immediate danger here. Although the weather is so bad that the rescue ships can't get close enough to get, now that they really want to get off the ship, they can't because the ships can't get there. And the master is still saying, the captain of the ship is still saying, we're not in any immediate danger. What would be going through your mind if you've been stuck on this rock in a frigid, freezing late October Pacific Northwest storm for a day and a half? Meanwhile, you've got the captain telling the rescue ships, go away, stay away. No, we're good. And then when you finally need them, they're like, I can't get there. Sorry.
Would need to wait for conditions to improve at low tide. The Cedar soon departed the scene to retrieve a longer anchor chain. Throughout the morning, Robinson kept contact with the Cedar's wireless operator, Elwood Miller. The two men were exhausted, Miller working for more than 24 hours at this point, relaying messages, organizing the rescue effort. They lost contact when the Sophia's power again failed at around 2 p.m., and they agreed to contact each other again at 4 p.m.
So it's been 36
Elwood
hours.
took the opportunity to finally get some rest, sleeping with his headset on in case his counterpart tried to contact him. 4 p.m. passed without a message from Robinson. Miller assumed Robinson was still resting. Just after sunset, at 4:50 p.m., his headset crackled with a frantic SOS from Robinson. Ship foundering on reef. Come at once. Miller replied that the Cedar was speeding to their rescue. Robinson's signal was so weak that it could hardly be heard. He radioed another desperate message. For God's sake, hurry. Water is coming into my room. Miller replied, we are coming. Save your batteries. Robinson, all right, but keep talking to me, so we will.
So there you go. They've stayed there so long. For whatever reason, water is starting to come in. I mean, reefs are sharp. Reefs are sharp and nasty. And if you have this ship that's just sitting there, rolling back and forth, there's a chance that it could have broke one of the valves, could have punched a hole. The reef could have punched a hole in the side of the ship when they grounded. But for whatever reason, the ship is taking on water, and now suddenly it's an emergency. It's never an emergency until it is. And now that sounds facetious, but it's true. It's never an emergency until it is. You don't think anything's going to go wrong. And by the time you accept that it is an emergency and something needs to be done, chances are you're too late. We tend to overestimate our abilities. And I think it's a thing that people like ships captains and other people like that tend to do, because they have such authority and they have such deep experience in their jobs and such intense training and immense training that you tend to overestimate your abilities. You tend to think you can pull it out. It's not as bad as we think it is. We can do this. And by the time you goes, holy crap, it's out of my control, then it literally is out of control. So that's, maybe that seems to be, to me at least, what happened here. They just waited too long. And then once they realized that, okay, there is no chance of us getting out of this by ourselves, it's too late for help to get there.
God's sake, hurry. Water is coming. SOS from Robinson. Ship foundering on reef. Come at once. Miller replied that the Cedar was speeding to their rescue. Robinson's signal was so weak that it could hardly be heard. He radioed another desperate message. For God's sake, hurry. Water is coming into my room. Miller replied, we are coming. Save your batteries. Robinson, all right, but keep talking to me so we will know you are coming.
Well,
that was the last message received from the Princess Sofia at 5:20 p.m. on October 25th. The Cedar desperately searched the area, but the stranded liner was nowhere to be found in the stormy darkness. What exactly happened in the Sophia's final moments is unknown, but it's clear that she came to a quick and violent end. Watches recovered from her victims all stopped at 5:50 p.m., marking the time they were thrown into the sea.
Yeah, how
Not a
wild is
single
that?
person on board the Princess Sophia survived. The only survivor was an English setter found in Auk Bay outside Juneau. It's believed that as the tide rose, the ship became partially buoyant, causing her to violently shift over the rocks in the heavy surf, ripping open her hull before washing her into the sea, where she quickly foundered. But many mysteries remain. Robinson's first SOS message was received almost a full hour before the watches on her victims stopped. While most of her passengers had time to don life preservers, the bodies of over 100 victims were found still in their cabin. All 8 of her steel-hulled lifeboats went down with the ship. In the icy water, victims would survive only minutes before.
See, and that tells you how quickly this thing went down. They've been sitting there for about 40 hours. 40 hours during which there were windows of opportunity to get people off. But then once it became apparent that it was too late, that ship went down so fast that a third of the passengers on that ship didn't leave their cabins. Not one of the lifeboats was deployed. And I mean, everybody's watch apparently stopped at the same time. So it was just like that thing just flipped. Doesn't sound like it was a slow sinking. It just sounds like it went boom, dumped everybody in the ocean, and it was game over that fast.
Succumbing to hypothermia. The next day, the storm died down considerably as the Cedar and other rescue vessels combed the area. When they reached the site, they found only her foremast sticking out of the water. The Princess Sophia was the deadliest maritime accident in the history of British Columbia and Alaska. With no survivors and larger world events to focus on, the Princess Sophia and her victims soon faded from memory. The little we know of what happened on board during those final hours came from her wireless messages and letters found on the bodies of her victims. We have no way of knowing what was passing through Captain Locke's mind during those critical hours after his vessel grounded. It can be assumed that he was well aware that the decision to evacuate could put his passengers in even more danger. He had no way of knowing that those few early hours of calm weather were the best window of opportunity he would ever get.
Hindsight.
And while it was possible in those hours to mount an evacuation, the steel lifeboats weighed more than a ton each and would have to be lifted off the rocks and into the water, an incredibly difficult and dangerous task. Another potential explanation for his decision came from Captain Ledbetter, who reported a rising barometer. Captain Locke surely would have been monitoring his own barometer and likely assumed that the weather would soon improve. As he looked out at the waves crashing violently on the rocks below, his mind no doubt went to the Clallam disaster, with lifeboats crashing into the sea, hurling helpless women and children to their deaths. His hope and confidence in his ship told him salvation was only moments away. Unfortunately, he was wrong, sealing the fate of everyone on board.
Well, that's the end of the first video. So we'll watch one more video, which it covers a lot of the same ground, but it does provide some additional information, some additional insight into the accident. But dang, I mean, you know, it's all hindsight. Hindsight, as they say, is 20/20. You know, as I said, you don't realize that particular moment of calm when you told people everything was going to be okay was literally going to be your last chance, because after that, literally nothing was okay. And in the end, like I said, everybody, 353 people died. The only survivor was a dog, the English setter. Hey, doggy, are you going to survive the shipwreck? Are you going to survive the shipwreck? No, you're a bulldog. You'd sink like a brick. Yep. Bulldogs aren't the best swimmers in the world. They're just kind of bricks. Strawberry would go down with the water. Interesting fun factoid about English bulldogs. Drowning is one of the top causes of death, for unnatural deaths for bulldogs. They just can't swim. So if you ever see a YouTube video of an English bulldog swimming, it's somewhat of a miracle. They just sink. not buoyant. All right. Got a few chats here to read. What exactly is Dead Reckoning? We already read that one. I meant to click on something else and re-clicked on that one. That's how I roll. Let me scroll back up to where we are. Where did you go? There we are. Talking trash and truth. Hi, sweetie. How's it going? How's it swinging? Well, that's rather personal. I sent you a DM on Twitter about an idea I had. Let's chat. Hugs for you and the puppies. I did see that. I just haven't had time to do anything to reply to anything. I'm days and days and I literally read everything I get. I reply to some of it and some. If I don't reply to it, don't think I didn't read it because I did. But I answer email all damn day long, and I go, oh, okay, that's nice. I should be a better human being and at least acknowledge that I get the emails. But I do swear to you, I read every piece of email I get in, and I do take notes on the suggestions you have for Maritime Monday and for other things. And I mean, I'm working with somebody here in chat to get Lorax hoodie designs and things like that. So we're gonna get some Lorax merch. Yeah, things like that. So, but they are there. Just I'm just really horribly slow at getting back to people. So please forgive me. So yes, I did read it. I will be sending you an email as soon as possible. Rose points out that of ocean-going vessels, including cruise ships, are required to carry their own black box known as a voyage data recorder. Yeah, that's kind of a new thing that's developed over the past couple of decades. It's essentially a black box, the same as an airplane black box. It records all of the sounds on the bridge, all the radar information, the vessel identification system, AIS. There's ECDIS, digital maps. There's all kinds of things that are recorded. It's exactly like an airplane black box. Everything, alarms. It tracks other vessels in the area, lets you know their speed, their course, your course, how close you are to each other, what the angle of approach is, how close you're going to pass to each other. All of this is recorded. So when there's an accident, lawyers are great because it takes a while. These VDR systems can only be extracted by there's a few VDR systems. Furuno is one. JYC from Japan, I believe it was JYC, but there's only a few companies that make these VDR systems for vessels, and they can only be removed by qualified technicians because you have to save the data and do all these other procedures with it. So lawyers go in, get the initial statements, get the initial facts, figure out what's going on, and then we get to analyze the black box, which is really cool. It has all the audio from the bridge, everything. So that's actually what I've been doing the last 2 weeks. There was 3 accidents. And I've been looking at the VDR data for these 3 accidents that happened recently, trying to figure out who did what, who was in the wrong, what percentage of liability should be assigned to each side, and, what rules they violated, things like that. So that's kind of fun. I like the VDR systems. Certainly makes my job easier. And we have Benjamin Lewis. Said Dead Reckoning is a great tool when every other tool is broken. Well, I don't even know if it's a great tool then. It's the only tool you've got when everything else is broken. That's what it's used for in today's world. It's just in case everything else is screwed. Yeah, and then that's like literally other than closing your eyes and doing that, that's really it. Aaron said, I thought I heard an English setter was the only survivor. Is that a job or a dog breed? That's the dog breed. So a dog survived. That's kind of it. Flux says, I do like the new view because we get to see the puppers. Yeah, well, like I said, that's the only place it can be because it's either that or off to the side, and I think like side cams are kind of weird. So this is probably where it's going to stay. Get used to it. What? You guys are funny. All right. Just checking the chats here to see if there's anything else I need to bring up that's of particular importance. No, not there. Thank you so much for that super chat, Flux. All right, we are at the midway point. We're a little over the midway point. But we've got 497 concurrent viewers. I think this might be a record for Maritime Monday. And 290 likes. We're still 200 likes behind. Everyone jump in there, smash that like button. Here's Darth Hideous. Darth Hideous is in the chat to stir up his usual storm. Oh shit! Welcome, Darth Hideous. Good to have you here. Tell me I'm coping about side cams being weird. Yeah, it is weird. Alrighty. So yeah, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We've had a subscriber since we started. That's a great thing. Appreciate that. And we have memberships available if that's something you're interested in. We're going to be doing a members only stream probably this weekend. Oh, and while I'm thinking about it, mods. Next week we're going to start our Moddy Christmas. So I'll be everyone that's here now, just to make sure I have you locked and loaded on Twitter or email, send me a direct message on Twitter or send me an email and let me know how I can get a hold of you so we can work out what times you guys are available if you want to participate in the very Moddy Christmas and come on here, be on camera with me, and meet the chat. Be a chance for the chat to meet the mods to meet the chats, and the mods to meet each other, and the other mods that aren't here, let them know, and I'll be reaching out to them as well. So starting next week, we'll be doing some Moddy Christmas stuff. So you can meet as many of the mods as you want. That'll be fun. Alan, thank you for the super chat there. Sup the pups. That's Strawberry's butt right there. Hey, Strawberry's butt. All righty. There we are. Oh, and another person is subscribed. Whoever just subscribed, thank you very much. That is deeply appreciated. Great to have you here. Continue to smash that like button. We're at 326 likes now. Should be up to about 500. So let's get us up to 500 while I bring up this next video. This will be the last video on the same incident. So again, there's going to be some overlap, but there are enough differences that I think it's instructive and is very, very interesting. Oh no. Vijaya's leaving. Bye, Vijaya. Come back soon. And this is from the Stunning History channel, so this might get copyright strike like nobody's business. I hope it doesn't, but it might. Legal Vices, how is Darth Hideous not a mod? Well, Darth Hideous knows why Darth Hideous isn't a mod. Darth Hideous isn't a mod because Darth Hideous is just a little bit unpredictable. Need a little more predictability. Jeff, stop simping. We simp for you. Yeah. Hey, I'm not simping. I'm grifting. You're the support grift. I'm the main grifter. So there we go. Now, see, Darth Hideous is much more fun in the chat. Because if a mod was stirring up shit the way Darth Hideous stirs up shit, I would have to unmod him. So it's it's best to let him just to let him be the guy in chat. That's just a nice way of saying Darth Hideous is a giant F slur, but that's why we like you. It's always good to have the rogue in chat. Anywho, let's get into this here. It's a 20-minute video, which means for me it'll be about 3.5 hours. All right, just kidding. Let's go. Like, subscribe, and super chat, whatever. Bye. Let's go. Oops. Oh, here we are. There we go. Got to bring up the actual screen. It doesn't help if I click on the wrong screen, does it? All right, now we're gonna start it. Thank you, everybody that super chatted so far. Let's go. Alan says, "Read my last message." Gonna make me work and scroll up to the last message. You should just repeat it. Vice says, "You have my DM on Instagram. I sent you 2 months ago." Okay, I'll have to look. I never...
Beneath the waves off the Alaskan coast lies a story that has long been forgotten by most of the world. Like so many stories that end at the bottom of the ocean, it's a story filled with despair and tragedy. But there's an element of psychological terror here that sets it apart from other tales of the sea. It's the story of the Princess Sofia, which ran aground and sank after some 40 hours of being stranded, taking with her all 350 plus passengers and crew. To this day, it remains the worst maritime accident in the history of the Pacific Northwest. The fact that nobody survived is tragic enough, but what's so chilling about this disaster is that rescue was so close. For nearly 2 days after running aground, passengers watched helplessly as multiple rescue ships circled the Sophia, only to be told that they couldn't leave the ship. The Sophia's captain felt the weather was too dangerous to attempt an evacuation, fearing his passengers would be drowned or crushed against the rocks. No, he decided. Leaving the ship was far too risky. It was best for everyone to remain on board and wait out the storm in the comfort of their cabin. Finally, after some 40 hours of waiting, the Sophia drifted free from the reef, only to sink and kill everyone on board. How could this happen? How could nobody survive after an entire fleet of ships came to their rescue? It is by far one of the most frustrating maritime disasters I've read about.
And it's just bizarre how everything looks like it's rational, but in hindsight, it's not the greatest way to go. But Chaos Coordinator asked a question. Legal Advice says, does your hat come from the Sturkovsky Company? Why, yes. Yes, it does. I don't know if you can see that. There we go. Yes, it does come from the Sturkovsky Company. Good spot. Good spot, Chaos Coordinator. This is the Sturkovsky Company. It is a Polish company that makes hats for Polish fishermen. And this is a Polish fisherman boat captain's hat. So yes, it comes from the Sturkovsky Company. And if you want to buy a hat just like this one, go to sturkovsky.com. Now back to our regularly scheduled program.
For hundreds of people to sit and wait for their impending doom while rescue felt so close, it's an agonizing thought even more than a century later. The tragedy, of course, raised questions as to whether the captain acted appropriately by keeping his passengers on board. In hindsight, obviously this was the worst choice he could have made.
Yeah.
But in the moment, he had two options. Either let his passengers attempt what he thought to be a high-risk evacuation, or remain on what felt like a very solid ship. Unlike other disasters that turn worse with panic, the story of the Sophia is a case study of what happens when hundreds of people are lulled into an almost surreal sense of security. It's a terrifying look at the cost of indecision, complacency, and misplaced faith, dragged out over an excruciating period of time. The SS Princess Sofia was one of 4 similar ships built by the Canadian Pacific Railway, or CPR. These new ships were part of CPR's new coastal service fleet and were constructed of steel after several of the company's wooden ships were wrecked along the inside passage in the Pacific Northwest. With a stronger hull, the Sophia was built to withstand severe ocean conditions, but she still wasn't permitted to stray too far from the coastline. With passengers, she had to stay within 58 miles or 93 kilometers of the coast. At 245 feet or 75 meters, the Sophia was considered a pocket liner, or put simply, a smaller ocean liner that offered reasonably comfortable accommodations for about 250 passengers. She set off on her maiden voyage in June of 1912. Less than a year later, the Sophia would put her double-bottom hull to the test. In April of 1913, the Sophia struck a rock at Sentinel Island off the Alaskan coast and tore a hole into her outer hull. This was the same island where, just 3 years earlier, another one of CPR's ships, the Princess May, was...
Yeah, that's the other ship I was telling you about that went aground. It's a sister ship to the Princess Sofia, and this might give you a good idea of what the Princess Sofia looked like when it was grounded. There you go. Yep. As someone mentioned earlier in chat, ship happens.
Was involved in an infamous grounding that left her jutting completely out of the water.
That'd be embarrassing.
Thanks to the Sophia's double-bottom hull, She only took on a small amount of water and was able to complete the journey to Vancouver.
Okay, so that's the other thing. 5 years before this tragedy, the same thing essentially happened to the Sophia. She hit the reef and ripped open the bottom of her ship.
In November of 1914, CPR took the Sophia and several other ships out of civilian service temporarily to ferry soldiers out of Skagway who were being trained for service in World War I. For several more years, she enjoyed a rather uneventful career. That is until October of 1918, when she would once again fall victim to the rocky coastline so prevalent along the Lynn Canal. Only this time, her steel hull would prove to be no match
Oh, I guess I
against
can
the
take that
forces
away
of
now.
nature.
Sorry.
On October 23, 1918, the Sophia arrived in Skagway, Alaska, where passengers and crew boarded for the return voyage to Vancouver. This was to be one of the Sophia's last scheduled voyages for the season, and passengers were eager to get out of Alaska before winter. As one might suspect, winter in Alaska is no picnic, and the village of Skagway had lost its luster among prospectors who had failed to strike it rich during the Klondike Gold Rush more than a decade before. Still, a few determined miners would often come to Skagway during the summer months with their families, hoping that this would be their lucky season. But even the prospect of gold wasn't enough to keep them around in winter. They were tired and cold, and it was time to head south before the last boat left for the season. Unfortunately, there was to be a delay. Several crew members had come down with the flu, and so the captain of the Sophia had to canvass the streets of Skagway to find replacements. Finally, around 10 o'clock that night, the fully booked Sophia left port with more than 350 passengers and crew. In command was 66-year-old Captain Leonard Locke, who had more than 25 years of experience working the Pacific Northwest. The Lynn Canal was like a second home for Locke, and with the weather relatively clear, he was confident that he could try to make up for the 3-hour delay in Skagway. And so, like many captains working under the stresses of getting to the next port on time, Locke began navigating his ship through the narrow canal at nearly full speed. About an hour into the voyage, the Sophia encountered strong winds and heavy snowfall. With virtually no visibility, the Sophia's crew turned to using a navigational method called dead reckoning. In marine navigation, dead reckoning is a less than ideal method of determining position.
Yeah, I'd say.
In a body of water as narrow as the Lynn Canal, this kind of imperfect navigational technique was an especially hazardous maneuver, and in this case, fatal, as they were now headed straight for Vanderbilt Reef. It is the stealthy, unassuming nature of Vanderbilt Reef that makes it so deadly for ships. At low tide, the rocky surface of the reef juts out only 12 feet or 3.6 meters above the surface. At high tide, which is when the Sophia was approaching it, the reef is completely submerged.
See, that's the problem. If they would have come in at low tide, they would have been able to see the reef in front of them. But it was high tide, so they couldn't see that the reef was just barely under the surface of the water. I need to start getting. I'm used to the camera angle being further down here. Like, this is where the camera is. They weren't expecting, I guess, because they were at least a mile and a half off course. They weren't expecting a reef there. If it had been low tide, they would have seen the reef above the water. But it was high tide, so the water was just barely covering the reef, and they didn't see it. So that's why they hit it at high tide. And Pinochet's helicopter tours asked, was it after the Titanic that life raft rules changed? Yeah, actually it was. That was the Titanic accident led to a lot of changes in maritime law. One of them was lifeboats. Weirdly, the lifeboat rules went back to 1894. And it was you had to have you had to have 16 lifeboats for ships over 10,000 tons. But the ships, since that law was made, had increased enormously in size. So weirdly, it was perfectly legal for ships such as the Titanic to have way fewer lifeboat spaces than there were people on board. And I can't remember what the percentage was for the Titanic, but there was it was less than 50%. There was enough lifeboat spaces for less than 50% of the people on the Titanic. But after the Titanic accident happened. Then there was a lot of changes brought about in maritime law, but one of the changes was life rafts, where suddenly it sort of became like a good idea to have a law requiring you to have enough lifeboat space for everybody on the ship. So literally on the Titanic, if every single person had got on board a lifeboat that could get on a lifeboat, more than half of the people still would have died. But now the law is you have to have a lifeboat space for everybody. So you are correct with that. That is what changed lifeboat rules. Oh, look at me. I love when I get to talk about things that I actually know what I'm talking about.
To make matters worse, it sits nearly dead center of the canal. Ships only have about 2.5 miles or 4 kilometers of clearance on each side. A year before, the Canadian Pacific Railway had submitted a request to have a light put on the reef to help their ships better navigate around it, but the request was denied due to funds being diverted for the war effort. Instead, an unlit buoy was the only indicator of the reef.
Oops.
Around 2 a.m. on October 24th, as the Sophia plowed blindly forward at about 11 knots, she struck Vanderbilt Reef, throwing passengers out of their beds and sending a shockwave of panic throughout the ship. A distress signal was immediately sent to Juneau, and within about 20 minutes, a rescue fleet was organized to assist the stranded ship. Meanwhile, on board the Sophia, passengers mulled about in various stages of unrest. Some were more concerned about their predicament than others. Passenger Oris McQueen wrote to his mother describing the situation after the collision. The letter was later found on his body. 2 women fainted, and one of them got herself into a black evening dress and didn't worry over who saw her putting it on, he wrote. Some of the men, too, kept life preservers on for an hour or so and seemed to think there was no chance for us. But we passed through the first real danger point at high tide at 6 a.m., when it was thought she might pound her bottom out on the rocks, and everybody settled down to wait for help.
I'll just let that statement sit there for all you degenerates here in chat that want to read about when she might pound her bottom out on the rocks and everybody settled down to wait for help. Yeah. Just thought I'd pause there long enough to read this super chat from Trial Junkie. Looking for something to watch after this marvelous yet melancholy episode of Maritime Monday, Jay Robine and I are covering the Aaron Dean trial over on Trial Junkie. There's one option for you. Thank you so much for the super chat, Trial Junkie. Let's jump back into the story.
As time passed, wind and waves pushed the Sophia further up onto the reef, and by the following afternoon, the ship's hull set completely out of the water. By this time, a hole had been punched into the outer hull of the ship, allowing water to flow in and out as the tides changed. But being that the vessel was securely on the rocks, the captain continued to believe that the ship's double hull would stay intact. On deck, passengers saw several rescue boats circling the Sophia within a few
Flux
hundred
helping
yards.
us. That's right. You pound
Some
that
of the
bottom out.
passengers had even brought out their luggage,
Thanks.
preparing to disembark the ship. As soon as the storm quits, we'll be taken off, Oritz writes in his letter. Even as the weather began to clear up, though, Captain Locke wasn't ready to let his passengers off the ship. He feared that if he lowered the lifeboats, passengers would be thrown into the rocks before having a chance to row to the surrounding ships. According to the official report, though, this fear of Captain Locke's was unwarranted. The weather moderated in the vicinity of the reef and remained so until early in the afternoon of the same day on the 24th, read the report, during which period passengers could have been transshipped to the several craft standing by and landed without very much, if any, risk of life. Why Captain Locke decided against evacuating at this time is a point of contention for many. Furthermore, the Sophia's 8 steel lifeboats would have presumably handled the rocks better than the standard wooden boats. One theory for Captain Locke's hesitation is that he recalled another shipwreck from a few years before called the Clallam. In 1904, when the steamboat Clallam grounded off the Canadian coast,
This is the one they mentioned at the
the
beginning
captain
of the other
ordered
video.
women and children to the boats when he thought the ship was sinking. During the launch, however, all 3 boats capsized, drowning all 54 people on board.
Yikes.
Men watched helplessly as their families sank beneath the waves. As it would later turn out, the ship stayed afloat long enough that everyone on board could be rescued. In Captain Locke's situation on the Sophia, he was likely considering the competence of his crew. Remember, Most of his crew was a group of men he had hired at the last minute in Skagway, many of whom likely knew very little about how to safely lower lifeboats. Rather than risk another Clallam situation, he figured it was best to wait for weather conditions to improve. After all, the Sophia was nearly 100 feet or 30 meters longer than the Clallam. Certainly, his ship was more solid and capable of weathering the storm. Over the course of the day, 9 boats arrived to provide assistance to the Sophia, but Captain Locke was insistent that his ship remain safe. He even used a megaphone to assure the other ships that everything was okay and that they should turn around and seek safety in the
I'll use
harbor.
a mega pint.
In other words, Locke's response to rescue ships throughout the day was essentially, "Thanks, but no thanks." Around 8 o'clock that evening, the
Bruce
USS
Plastic from the
Cedar
telephone-
arrived after
television
sailing
cover in
some
there.
75 miles or 122 kilometers. As the largest all-weather ship in the area, the Cedar could have gotten close enough to the Sophia to rescue its passengers. That is, if it had been notified earlier when the storm had partially subsided. As it was now, though, the waves were too rough even for the Cedar to anchor. Captain Ledbetter aboard the Cedar sent a wireless to Captain Locke asking for permission to take shelter. "Captain Locke, if Sophia is in no danger of slipping off and passengers are safe until daylight, I'd like to drop anchor under Sentinel Island and be in touch by wireless. If you think necessary, I can remain underway all night." To which Captain Locke basically responded, "Sure, you can go, but do you think she'll back off the rock at the next high water?" To which Ledbetter seems to evade Locke's question by saying, "Look, it's really rough out here, and I can't make anchor, but I think your passengers are perfectly safe until the wind moderates." And with that, the Cedar left the Sophia as waves continued to batter the stranded ship.
I think is always a bad thing.
On board the Sophia, passenger morale sunk to an all-time low. In a letter to his fiancée, passenger Jack Maskell wrote, "My own dear sweetheart, I'm writing this dear girl while the boat is in grave danger. We are expecting the lights to go out any minute. The boat might go to pieces, for the force of the waves are terrible, making awful noises on the side of the boat, which has quite a list to port. I made my will this morning, leaving everything to you, my own true love."
So this is kind of the first indication we have that the ship was actually listing to port, like as you're looking forward from the ship, leaning to the left, because the captain just kept saying, "There's no problems with this. Yeah, we're okay. It's not an emergency. There's no urgent danger. There's no urgent issue to get the people off the ship. We're all good." That's why they sent the ships away before. That's why they sent the one ship that really could have rescued them away, because the weather was calming down. But then, as you can see, the weather picked up enough here that people were writing wills and sending their last letters.
By the morning of October 25th, hope continued to fade when the Cedar once again failed to anchor in the rough seas. The captain of the Cedar radioed into Captain Locke on the Sophia that they might have better luck in low tide. That afternoon, the Cedar coordinated a rescue plan with a fishing schooner called the King and Wing. Captain Ledbetter on board the Cedar would try to block the wind with his ship and use his lifeboats to carry the Sophia's passengers to the King and Wing. They decided, though, that the weather conditions still posed too much of a risk. They would have to wait until morning to attempt such a rescue mission. They figured that the Sophia had already lasted this long on the rocks. Surely she could last until the next morning. But that evening, around 5 o'clock, the Sophia sent a wireless message saying, "Ship foundering on reef. Come at once."
That's where they started
About 30
taking
minutes
on water.
later, the wireless operator's desperation was apparent. "For God's sake, hurry. The water is coming into my room."
And this is the guy in the, we don't know where the telegraph was, but the telegraph was usually on the bridge back then. And if water's coming to the bridge or into his cabin, that's a bad thing, because those are usually some of the last places to fill with water.
After arriving on scene, the Cedar attempted to locate the Sophia, but the wind and snow were so strong that the captain felt his own ship was in danger of running onto the reef. Once again, he was driven back and decided he would have to try later. The next morning, on October 26th, rescue ships returned to Vanderbilt Reef, only to find their worst fears realized. Where the ship had been just hours prior was now empty, but sticking out of the water next to the reef, just barely visible in the choppy sea, was a small section of the Sophia's mast.
Yeah, this is literally the last picture anyone has. of the Princess Sophia. Just the very tip top of the mast poking out above the water next to the reef.
The Sophia was gone, an underwater tomb for hundreds of people. For several hours, they combed the water looking for survivors, but to no avail. Bodies later pulled from the water had watches that were frozen at 5:50 p.m., indicating that the ship sank quickly after the last wireless message. While there were no witnesses to the sinking, it's assumed that the stern of the Sophia became buoyant again and swung to the side with the bow still on the rocks. Because of
That
this
would do it.
contortion and the ship's
Yep.
bottom plates tearing open against the rocks, the Sophia
Yeah, so what they're saying is that likely the front part of the ship stayed on the rocks, the back part floated, and then just proceeded to grind and twist the front end of the ship that was lodged in the rocks until it punctured the hole and water poured in.
rapidly flooded as it drifted into deeper water. Divers would later discover more than 100 bodies trapped inside their cabins, all passengers who had been seeking refuge from the harsh weather and apparently oblivious to the grave danger that the ship was in. Others who managed to make it to the water were quickly overcome by the oil and fuel that spilled into the sea after the ship split open. Those who didn't suffer the fates of drowning or suffocation quickly froze to death in the frigid water. There are some theories that say the boilers exploded, which contributed to the rapid sinking, but divers to the Sophia say her 3 boilers remain intact. In the end, there were no survivors, except for one oil-slicked dog who managed to swim to
Aw.
shore and was found days later.
It was oil slick.
After the sinking, the grieving communities of the Pacific Northwest all wondered, why didn't the captain even attempt to get people off the ship? Numerous legal battles ensued after the sinking, with plaintiffs demanding that the Canadian Pacific Railway take some responsibility for the actions of Captain Locke. Initially, CPR was deemed liable in the sinking by a federal judge, and the company was ordered to pay roughly $2.5 million to the crew and passengers' families, as well as $1 million in legal fees. But less than 2 weeks later, the same judge reversed his decision, ruling that CPR's liability was limited under the Limited Liabilities Act of 1851. Under this new ruling, CPR was now only responsible for the cost of baggage and passenger fares. After a series of investigations and legal battles, it was determined that CPR and Captain Locke had done all they could to save those on board. In what was a small victory for the victims of the Sophia, a light was finally mounted on Vanderbilt Reef, along with other navigational aids on Lynn Canal. The loss.
Well, this goes to a Korean saying. There's a great Korean saying for something like this. You fix the barn gate after the horse has escaped. Yeah, after the accident, they decided it's going to be a good idea to put some lights there, to put a bigger buoy, to do things like that, to sort of alert people to those rocks sitting there. Probably would have been helpful to have those there at the beginning, but again, hindsight 2020.
Of the Sophia, as devastating as it was for the tight-knit communities of the Pacific Northwest, did not stir up a national media frenzy. The sinking occurred just 2 weeks before the armistice of November 11th, 1918, which ended fighting between Allies and Germany. With this news came a global sigh of relief as headlines celebrated the end of the First World War. It waved in a new era of hope and progress after years of international unrest and the killing of millions of people. The world was celebrating, so much so that the bodies of Sophia victims were temporarily delayed at port due to the end of war festivities. It's safe to say that the Sophia was barely a blip within the context of the international stage.
See, that's one thing I thought was fascinating. This is one of the reasons why we're watching this particular video here. Is ordinarily a ship sinking where 353 people lose their lives would make news around the world. But like 2 weeks later, World War I ended. Nobody paid attention to this. It's one of the reasons why it remains largely unknown, except for people in that area.
But it sent a shockwave of loss throughout the coastal communities of Alaska, British Columbia, and the Yukon. These people were already mourning the loss of their soldiers at war. The Sophia disaster was yet another tear in the already delicate social fabric of these communities. The phrase window of opportunity comes to mind when I think about the Princess Sophia disaster. We know that for nearly the whole time the ship was stranded, a storm raged on so furiously that rescue seemed impossible. But for a moment, there was a brief respite in the weather, according to witnesses. A window of opportunity, so to speak, that Captain Locke should have seized immediately to save his passengers. Would they have all been saved, or would they have been thrown into the sea and drowned as the captain predicted? So many whys and what-ifs surround the Princess Sophia disaster, so many theories as to what was going through the captain's head as he considered his options. And what about the passengers?
We'll never know.
One has to wonder what they were thinking as surrounding ships taunted them with the hope of rescue that would never come.
And those letters are really the only link we have to what was going on the ship at that time. And I thought, so that's why I wanted to share this with you, because it's a largely unknown event, and it's really bizarre that they're stuck on a reef relatively close to shore, close enough for an oil slick dog to swim there. Yet 353 people died. I mean, it's inexplicable. It really is. You can explain away each of the individual events. Okay, we're stuck on a rock. It's not like we're sinking. Okay, the weather's bad, but it'll get better. But then these things start to stack up, and there's not one event that triggers everything. It's sort of when you get to that point and you realize, yeah, our point of no return was a few events ago. And that's where we're stuck here. And we have this shit where 353 people died. And then the end of World War I, so nobody even remembers them. Well, that kind of brings our Maritime Monday to an end here. We got some chats to read through here. Then I want to hit on a couple things. Then we're gonna bump out. Sup the pups. We already said that when we get a twofer. Pinochet's helicopter tour said, I believe it was 10% life raft capacity on the Titanic. Remember, ocean liners gave third-class one-way tickets as advertising, often overcrowding below a deck. Yeah, I just remember it was like less than 50%. I have no idea if it was 1% or 49%. I just remember it being like less than 50% of the people on the Titanic had lifeboat seats. And I'm guessing the people in third class, in the steerage class, were not going to be the first ones to be offered place on the life raft. Just look at Jack. He sank from a door. There was room for 2 people on that door, you bitch. And come on, Leo. She doesn't want to share. Kick her ass off and you take that raft. Nobody will ever know. Anyway, legal vices. Q, can we get a poll on the new camera angle? No, because there's really no other place to put the camera other than like a total side view. And that way you either get a window that's reflecting everything in the room, or you get a container, some old computer equipment, a bunch of guitars, a box. So this is literally the only angle. But the question that we can ask is, this is going to be a 1, 2, or 3 question. And I'm just going to go, we're not going to do a formal poll because we don't have time. The only thing we can really do is adjust the zoom at this point. So this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3, maybe even a 4. So I don't know, 4, 3, 2, 1. If we go, this is 181%. If we got any more, you're just going to see like moobs and all, tables and stuff and storage rooms. That's 100%. And I hate this view because then I look like I'm like a midget, and I'm not. I'm slightly larger than one. So, all right. This is where I had it. This is a little small, I think. I kind of like this one. So 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or something like that. I don't know. Anyway. That's kind of all we can really do, because the camera is essentially stuck where it is 1 or 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1s. We got 1s and 2s. 3s. All right, we'll screw around with it over the next few days, and I'll decide what I'm comfortable with, because it looks like we're just about even with 1, 2s, and 3s. Until then, we'll just kind of have to deal with it. Like I said, this was just here 5 minutes before I came on air, because I was staunching the massive gouge taken out of my leg due to a dog-related fall. So what have we got coming up here? Oh, I got to do a one back channel thing here real quick. And while I'm doing that, make sure those of you that are still here. Wow, why is my voice so high today? All right, we've got to relax the voice. Okay. While I'm doing this back stage thing, his background here. Everybody that hasn't subscribed, please do me a solid and reach down there and smash that like button if you haven't already done so. Don't do it twice because that takes it away. I'm setting us up here for what's going to happen next. Be right with you. Hit that like button while I'm doing this. I should have done this before, but I just remembered it right now. So, save. All right. Everything that needs to be saved has been saved. And I like how I have to look really high up to see the screen now. All right, here's what's going to happen tomorrow. Tomorrow, I will have a special guest on. I will have a DUI guy. We're just going to have a sit down. We're going to have a couple hours sit down. DUI guy was one of the first people to sort of give me a big YouTube bump when all of his drama was happening with the other channel, the other LawTube channel, and when he was not allowed in court one day. Both times, I was the only person that happened to be streaming, and this was literally just right at the beginning, like the first few days of my YouTube career. And DUI guy came on, and we got a huge bump in people from then. And we haven't really sat down and talked with each other since about 6 months ago. So I wanted to have him. I saw him on, Farron was on his channel the other day, and then he was on with Nick. And I thought, I haven't talked to him in a long time either. So let's invite him on. And he agreed to come on. So DUI guy Larry will be here tomorrow. We'll talk for a while. And Wednesday, we'll be doing some updates on the Idaho case and the Griner case. Well, the Griner case, not really a case. The Griner situation. Griner. We'll be doing some Griner and some University of Idaho on Wednesday. Thursday is O.J. Simpson. Friday we'll probably, I'm not sure what we'll do Friday yet. I haven't decided. We'll get to Friday a little bit later. But join me tomorrow where DUI guy will be here. It's just going to be a sit down. We're going to be talking about everything, each other, just kind of shooting the shit for a couple of hours. So it'll be a chance for you guys, if you have any questions, to ask if you want. So there we go. And what's going to happen right now is when I hang up this broadcast, when I hang up this telephone, and there's a generational thing. People my age, you do mimic talking on a phone, and they do this. You talk to the young kids and say mimic talking on a phone, and they do this. That's kind of weird. I noticed that like a while ago. Anywho, as soon as I end this broadcast, it's going to automatically feed us into Ricada Law, into Nick's stream. And I will be joining Nick, Kurt, and Andrew, Law of Self-Defense, where we're going to watch day 4 of the Aaron Dean trial. So you should get sent immediately right over there. And when you do, give Nick a howdy. Let him know that he just got raided by Legal Vices and that I'll be there in about 10 minutes. Once I end this, I've got to go stuff some food in my face, and then I'll be over on Nick Ricada's channel. We'll be doing that. So go watch the Aaron Dean trial on Ricada Law, where I'll be there in about 10 minutes. Right now it's him, Andrew, and Kurt. 2 super chats here to wrap it up, and then we'll dump you into him and make sure you 3 super chats, I guess. I don't know. I'm running out of numbers. Pinochet's helicopter tours. Reminder to look into connections with the USS Pueblo. Interesting story. USS Scorpion, Swordfish, CIA's Project Azorian, and K-129 leads to Russia and U.S. tensions today. The USS Pueblo, definitely. And that's a we should do the USS Pueblo. There's a good Korea-connected case. Why not? Yeah. All right. Hey, thanks. Good idea. Why didn't I think of that? And Stardust said, I found the hat listed as Greek fisherman's cap. His was leather. Are you talking about this? I only found it in black so far, but surely someone has it in brown, so I know how to look for it. This hat, as it is from Sturkovsky.com. If you go to Sturkovsky.com and go to like sailor/mariner hats, this is the Kashubia Model 2. Kashubia Model 2 wool cap. It's blue. It's a dark navy blue. It's like $68. This is the Kashubia Model 2, Sturkovsky.com, sailor/mariner. Damn, Sturkovsky, give me some grift here. Come on, give me some support. Give me a free hat. I like free hats. There we go. I wish I could tell you to tell them Visa sent you, but they don't give a shit. So. Bass player 2001 IFY recommendation for Maritime Monday. 105th anniversary of the SS Atlantic is April 1st. Please email me that or direct mail me on Twitter. direct message me on Twitter. The Legal Vices at Twitter and thelegalvices@gmail.com. Send it there so it's on a permanent record. And like I said, I go through and I go down everybody's list and I write them down on my file. And then I go and look for them. If you have any links to videos or documentaries about them, that helps as well. So thank you very much for that. And let's see. Is that everything? Let me check the list here. Maritime Monday, I believe it was 10%. That is it. We have got all of the super chats out of the way for today. Thank you very, very much, everybody being here. We hit exactly 400 likes. That is super awesome. Deeply appreciate that. We're back down to 520 likes, 2 subscribed, and 2 of you decided we don't like you anymore. So there you go. I'm gonna hang up here. Hang up. Why do I keep saying hang up? Damn. All right, gonna end the broadcast. That should dump you straight into Nick Recada's stream. Tell him hi. Tell him I'll be there in 10 minutes, and we'll see you over there. If not, go to Recada Law and find us there with me, Nick, Kurt, and Andrew, Law of Self-Defense. See y'all in a bit. Until tomorrow, when we have DUI guy and Farron, I know I see you lurking here in chat. We see you there. So Farron, thank you for you and Nick gave me the idea to have DUI guy on because I haven't seen him in like 6 months. So thank you for that, Farron. Everybody take care and go until tomorrow. Enjoy your legal vices. Say hi to Nick for me.